I have to preface matters by saying I'm not trying to vilify Muslims or encourage hatred against Islam. I just want to quote from their own literature. I'm simply going to quote from the Hadith and from the Quran. That's all. I'm quoting from the Hadith and the Quran. But I would like to ask Muslims some questions. I'm simply putting this out as a question. My first question is this. How can you expect anyone to believe the following: that somebody was a prophet of God? They are the greatest prophet of God. That there is no prophet greater than they are, and God has had no greater or no higher spokesman than this person. What would you say of somebody who, at the age of approximately 53 or 54, married a little girl at the age of 6, and at the age of 9, when she was playing on a swing, you come to her, give her a glass of milk, and take her to your bed and take her virginity? What do we call a 53 or 54-year-old man who has sex with a little girl at the age of 9? Do we call him a prophet of God? We don't. I'd like to invite my Islamic friends to please explain the following. In the Hadith, Bukhari, Volume 5, number 234, narrated by Aisha. Aisha was the daughter of Abu Bakr. Muhammad the Prophet was engaged to me when I was a girl 6 years old. I was playing in a swing with some of my girlfriends. Unexpectedly, Allah's apostle came to me in the afternoon, and my mother handed me over to him. At that time, I was a girl of 9 years of age. And Bukhari, Volume 5, number 236, the Prophet married Aisha when she was a girl of 6 years old and consummated that marriage when she was 9. Islam is a religion that teaches Muhammad was a pedophile. That is what their religion teaches. I, as a Christian, am not calling Muhammad a pedophile. No Jew ever called Muhammad a pedophile. Muslims call Muhammad a pedophile. That is what their religion teaches. This man had sex with Aisha, the daughter of Abu Bakr, when she was a little girl. He was a middle-aged man. Can you please explain to me why, since your religion in the Hadith teaches your prophet was a pedophile, how can you expect any Western person, any Christian, any Jew, anybody, to believe that a man who would have sex with a little girl is the greatest prophet? How can we believe such a man was a holy man? Now again, I'm not trying to incite hatred against Muslims. I'm not trying to blaspheme your religion. I'm not trying to insult your prophet. I'm simply saying what your religion teaches. Your religion teaches that this man had sex with a little girl. Can you please explain to me why I should believe a man who had sex with a little girl is God's greatest prophet? I can't find any Muslims who will explain this to me. I've been to the Persian Gulf, I've been to Morocco, I've been to Turkey, I've been to Indonesia, I've been to Malaysia, I've been from one end of the Muslim world to the other. I've talked to Muslims in London and America, I've talked to Muslims a lot of places. Can one of you please tell me how you can believe a man who would do such a thing is the greatest prophet of God, and why I should believe he's the greatest prophet of God? What do you want to do? Kill me or kill somebody for quoting from your own book? I didn't write that book. That's your book. It's not my book. I'm simply reading your literature. What do you want to do? Hate me for reading your book? I'm only reading your book. It's your book, not mine. Don't hate me. Don't try to kill me for reading your book. You wrote it. I didn't write it. It's not my book. Christians didn't write this. It's your book. What do you want to do? Hate me for writing it? Kill me because I read something in your book? If you find it offensive, why do you believe it? Please answer me the question. If you want to look it up in your book, it's in the Hadith. Bukhari, Volume 5, Numbers 234 and 236. Your religion teaches Muhammad had sex with a little girl. But I have another question. I'd like to ask this question. If Islam is a religion of peace and tolerance, why is it that you have no democracy anywhere except where it's been imposed by the West? And can you please tell me one Muslim country that will give Christians and Jews the rights you have in Australia, in Britain, in Europe, in America, or even in Israel? Show me one. If you're a religion of peace and tolerance, can you please explain to me? I'm only asking the question, why is there 2.3 million dead Christians in Sudan? Why were 300,000 Christians massacred by the Muslims in East Timor? Why, please, are there 65,000 dead in the southern Philippines? Why 30,000 or so murdered in the Moluccan Islands? Why 40 to 50,000 murdered in Eritrea? Why 60,000 murdered in northern Nigeria, etc.? Why, if it is a religion based on peace and tolerance, were there thousands of people behaving like barbarians, rioting in the streets of London, England, demanding the murder of a British citizen, himself a Muslim, for writing a book? Can you please answer? I'm only asking the question. If you're a religion of peace and tolerance, where does peace and tolerance exist in the Muslim world today? I only want to know. You're telling me it's a religion of peace and tolerance? I've heard that and heard that and heard that, but all I've seen on the news is suicide attacks. I'm tired of hearing, please show me. I just want to see it. It's reasonable. Why is there 3 times as many conflicts in today's world involving Islam as all the other religio people groups put together? Why? Why in one country in Europe like Denmark, 4% of the population are Muslims, but 40% of the people on the dole are Muslims. And the overwhelming majority of convicted rapists are Muslims, while their victims are overwhelmingly Danish. That's just one example. Why was Theo van Gogh murdered for making a film about human rights in the Muslim world in Amsterdam? Why? Can you please explain to me? If you are a religion of peace and tolerance, why? Now, I'm told this is a small minority. Fine, if it's a small minority, please show me mainstream Islam. Show me one country that is democratic in your world. Show me one country that will give me the freedom as a Christian that we give you in America, Britain, and Australia. Just show me one. Fair question. I'm not attacking, I'm asking the question. Let me ask you this. We have people saying Christianity is a white man's religion. They are looking for converts from the black communities around the world. There are traditions in Islam that said Muhammad owned black slaves. Some would perhaps dispute this. It is without dispute that he called black people raisin heads. But here is my question. Why is it that if Christianity is a white man's religion, the first countries to abolish slavery were Christian? The last countries to abolish slavery are Muslim, except they haven't abolished it yet. Go on the website Anti-Slavery International. See where slavery is still practiced. Chad, Mauritania, Niger, Sudan. Rich Muslims with poor black slaves today, 2005. One man in Chad has 7,000 slaves. Just look on the human rights websites. Look on the women's rights websites. No, I don't agree with homosexuality, but look on the homosexual rights websites. Please show me the tolerance. I just want to know where it is, since that's what you're always telling us. It's only a question. If it's only a small minority, show me one place. Where's the majority? I've looked at your world. I've been to many Muslim countries. I've been to many. From Asia to North Africa to the Middle East, I've been to many Muslim countries. Maybe I didn't visit the right ones. Please show me where the tolerance is. America fought a civil war. 1 out of every 8 people in the northern states, 1 out of every 8 adult males were killed or wounded fighting a war that saw the abolition of slavery. Why did the Christian nations abolish it? Why has Islam not abolished it? It is a fair question. Slavery is the ultimate social evil. Why do you still have it? Fair question. I'm not trying to insult you. I'm only asking the question. Why do you do that to black people in Islamic countries? The leaders of the civil rights causes were at least nominally Christian. Martin Luther King was a Baptist minister. Desmond Tutu says he's an Anglican bishop. Civil rights movement, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, these things came from Christianity. The abolitionist movement in the United States came from Christianity. People like Charles Finney preached against slavery. In England, William Wilberforce, the Earl of Shaftesbury, the Methodists opposed slavery and brought about the laws that abolished it. Christian nations got rid of it. I have a lot of questions like that. Remember, Arabs invented digits, numbers. Greeks, Romans, they used letters. Hebrews used letters for numbers. Arabs were very good mathematicians during the Middle Ages. Good astronomers, good scientists. They weren't always backward. It was fundamentalism that brought the ignorance in being backward. Given the fact that you people invented numbers, you did. You invented digits. I assume you know how to count. And I would assume that God knows how to count. Miriam in Hebrew is Mary, the mother of Jesus. 1st century AD. Miriam, the sister of Moses, was 13th century BC. Why does your holy book say that Miriam, the sister of Moses, and Mary, the mother of Jesus, are the same Miriam? Now, I believe in a God of miracles. You believe in a God of miracles. I actually believe that Methuselah lived to be over 900 years old. But actually, don't you think 1,300 years old is kind of old to have a baby? I'm only asking the question. How can they be the same woman when they lived 13 centuries apart? Or for that matter, how can Haman from the book of Esther in ancient Persia, an Agagite, a descendant of Amalek, have been a court official in Pharaoh's Egypt? you got a problem. Haman, the Persian Empire, that was 5th century. Pharaoh was 13th century. Quite a discrepancy. Can you explain something else to me, please? Your religion has a surat called Ummah, which says Muslims are one nation and one people. One. Notice something. In the Judean Christian world, in the Western world, no two democracies have ever had a war. Whenever there was a war in the Christian world, or the Christianized world, I'm using the term Christian broadly, at least one of those countries was not democratic. They were fascist, they were Nazi, they were something like that. But never have any two democracies had a war. Never. Yet, the Wahhab came to power, bringing the House of Saud to the throne in Saudi Arabia through what they called a jihad. The costliest war in terms of human life since the Second World War was the war between Iran and Iraq. 1.5 million Muslims killed by other Muslims in what their religious leaders called a jihad. Jihad of Muslims killing other Muslims. Why did Iraq invade Kuwait? Why did the Kuwaitis massacre the Palestinian Arabs? Why is it, please, that when Arafat and the Palestinian Arabs tried on the Jordanians what they tried on the Israelis in Black September of 1970, in 12 days, the Jordanians systematically massacred between 15 and 18,000 so-called Palestinians in 12 days. Why did the Polisarios fight the Moroccans? Why? The tragedy of what happened to the Kurds. Why? Why is there no Ummah? Why is it that Islam cannot deliver historically what it promises? Ummah. No two Judeo-Christian democracies have ever had a war. Can you please explain to me, how come your religion doesn't seem to work? I'd like to know. Australia's not going to have a war with France. America's not going to have a war with Norway. Israel's not going to have a war with Canada. But Iran will have a war with Iraq. Kuwait had a war with Saudi Arabia. Egypt almost had a war with Libya. Jordanians had a war with the Palestinians. The Turks enslaved the Arab nations. Please explain to me why you don't have Ummah. Why it is only the Judeo-Christian democracies that have been able to prevent war. Islam has not been able to. Can you explain it to me? It is a fair question. We read in the Hadith, Bukhari, volume 3, number 658. Narrated Aisha, a man called Labid bin al-Asam from the tribe of Bnei Zarek worked magic on Allah's apostle until Allah's apostle began imagining that he had done a thing that had not really been done. Bukhari, volume 7, number 660 says, narrated again by Aisha, magic was worked on Allah's apostle so that he used to think that he had sexual relations with his wives when he actually had not. He's under the effect of magic or witchcraft. Bukhari, volume 7, number 661, narrated by Aisha. Magic was worked on Allah's apostle so that he began to imagine that he'd done something, although he had not. How can you be sure in the historicity of Muhammad and the deeds attributed to him when the hadith says he used to go around thinking he did things that he didn't? As if he was senile, only it was not senility, it says he was bewitched. When your own literature says, because of some kind of occult or magical or witchcraft practice, he imagined he did things he didn't, how can you be sure he did anything? It's a fair question. Muhammad said hell is populated mainly by women. Bukhari, volume 1, number 28, the Prophet said, I was shown the hellfire and that the majority of its dwellers were women who were ungrateful. Bukhari, volume 1, number 301, Allah's apostle said, O women, give alms, as I have seen that the majority of the dwellers of hellfire were you women. I've not seen anyone more deficient in intelligence and religion than you. Bukhari, volume 2, number 161, the Prophet then said, I also saw the hellfire, and I had never seen such a horrible sight. I saw that most of the inhabitants were women. The Judeo-Christian faith teaches all have sinned, all fall short of the glory of God. None is righteous, no, not one. That is why we believe that Jesus went to the cross to pay the price for our sin. It doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man. If you have not accepted Jesus' atonement for your sin, you will go to hell. Being a woman has nothing to do with it. Being an Asian has nothing to do with it. Being a Jew has nothing to do with it. Being an Arab has nothing to do with it. Being a black African has nothing to do with it. Being an Eskimo has nothing to do with it. All have sinned, all fall short of the glory of God. We are all going to hell until and unless we put our faith in Jesus and ask him to forgive us. Now your religion says hell is mainly populated by women? That would mean heaven is mainly populated by men. You see, the New Testament says we can have the assurance of salvation. Muhammad did not know what Allah, God, his God, would do to him on the judgment day. The Bukhari, volume 5, number 266, the Prophet said, by Allah, even though I am the apostle of Allah, yet I do not know what Allah will do to me. If Muhammad didn't know if he was going to heaven, how can you be sure you're going to go to heaven? Now there are fundamentalist Muslims who teach the assurance of salvation as in being shahadi, dying in a jihad. That's why they, well, in some cases, fundamentalists raise their children to be suicide bombers. They believe, of course, they'll get the 70 virgins and all this stuff. That's the assurance of salvation according to some fundamentalists. I don't say all Muslims necessarily agree. Some don't. But all Muslims must agree with the Hadith or they wouldn't be Muslims, and Muhammad said he didn't know what was going to happen to him when he met his Maker. Now, the New Testament teaches we can have the assurance of salvation if we put our faith in Jesus. That although all have sinned, all fall short of the glory of God, we can sing, bold I approach the eternal throne and claim the crown through Christ my own. Rabbi Shaul of Tarsus, St. Paul the Apostle said, I have run the good race, I have fought the good fight, hence I know there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness. Christianity says you can have the assurance of salvation. Muhammad said he didn't. If I had a choice between a faith that says I can have the assurance of salvation and one that says I can't, even its founder couldn't, Why should I believe that religion unless it was true? Let's talk a little bit more about the scientific basis of the scripture. The Judeo-Christian scriptures warn people not to inbreed, not to have incestuous relationships within families. That was known long before genetic science. God knew things and said, don't inbreed. And of course we know that when people do inbreed, they are going to procreate children that will be much more predisposed to congenital illness, long before we knew about genetic science. If that same God is the God of the Koran, he should know the same things as the God of the Bible. So they asked Muhammad, why does a child resemble its father, and why does it resemble his maternal uncle? Allah's apostle said, Gabriel just now told me of their answers. And Abdullah said, he from among all the angels is the enemy of the Jews. Well, not according to the New Testament, but that's what the Hadith teaches. Bukhari, volume 4, number 546. Allah's apostle said the following: as for the resemblance of the child to its parents, if a man has sexual intercourse with his wife and reaches his climax first, the child will resemble the father. If the woman experiences sexual orgasm first, the child will resemble her. That accounts for which parent the kid's going to look like. That is what your religion teaches. Now, God understands about X and Y chromosomes. He understood about recombinant DNA before Watson and Crick. In fact, God invented recombinant DNA. It was his idea. Scientifically, there's another explanation. And biblically, before we knew about recombinant DNA, God was warning people about certain things like genetically transmitted disease. That is what accounts for resemblance.